they're in my queue, and yeah. Anyway, introductions, anybody, or we can just get started. Cool. Awesome. Okay, so I hope everybody is seeing the meeting notes. They should be linked from the invite. Should all, I think it's just an edit link. If you have any problems, let me know. But on the agenda for today, talk a little bit about the metrics at OpenSSF.org, security insights from Luigi, who will join 15 or 20 minutes late. Amir, if you have any updates from security reviews, happy to do that. Happy to talk about Alpha Omega and what's going on there, or just any questions. I mean, we had the White House meeting last week, so if there are any questions and things of things that we can talk about, we would. I'm sure we can have that as a discussion point, and just anything else, like you know, especially for the new folks. Happy to answer questions and talk about what we're doing and what we want to do and stuff like that. If there's anything you'd like to talk about, feel free to add it to the agenda or just kind of speak up.
So Michael, I was thinking one thing, since there is a great opportunity for all of us that, you know, we have someone who attended the White House meeting, such as you. I was wondering.
And David.
And David, I guess. Yeah, sorry. I was not aware of that.
Yeah.
Well, such as there too. I was wondering if you could consider just giving us a brief sort of rundown of whatever thing of substance you think came out of that meeting, or that it would be interesting for folks here to hear about. You know,
sure.
Without taking too much of your time, but you know, even just like a
no, yeah, absolutely, yeah, sure. So I don't know, David, I'll like tag team it with you. I thought the meeting went well. I thought most of the participants were focused on the right things. They had kind of insightful comments, kind of common realization that the world depends on open source, and they needed to be secure and trustworthy and resilient, and that there's no. I think the phrase "there is no silver bullet" was mentioned at least like 6 times during the meeting. So I think that was encouraging. That there was. There wasn't any talk about, you know, we should use less open source, or we should like do anything like weirdly draconian, or, you know, anything completely like opposite the route that we've been going. I thought OpenSSF was mentioned, and you know, both Jim and David and Brian, you know, talked a lot about, you know, the goals of OpenSSF and how it kind of aligns. David, feel free to kind of jump in.
Yeah, sure. So I was there too. I thought there was a lot of useful comments. I threw in a link to a readout from the White House, and I actually thought they did a fine job of summarizing, you know, a multi-hour meeting. So basically, 3 main topics kind of emerged. Preventing security defects and vulnerabilities, improving the process for finding them, and shortening response time, because perfection's kind of hard. I'm a big believer that you know, it's going to be impossible to find humans that ever make mistakes, but instead of saying, gee, mistakes will happen, nothing will change, I think it's important to say, great, well, that's unfortunate. What can we learn? What can we do to make things better? Because I believe that there are always ways, you know, well, there are almost always ways to make better. Certainly true in this case. Just from an LF perspective, Brian and I and Jim sat down and tried to work up some sort of summary. We interacted with a lot of folks ahead of time, trying to come up with some sort of you know, plan what could be done next. You'll be unsurprised to know that we thought OpenSSF was a really important part of that, but you know, a whole bunch of stuff that we've been talking about already. Things like there needs to be funding for, well, we didn't call it Alpha Omega, but I think Michael Scavetta saw our text, and I think he had no trouble figuring out what we were talking about without using the words. So basically, identify the critical software projects, really focus in on helping those for a broader list of important, but you can't do everything. What can we do with tooling to try to quickly find at least some of the more important vulnerabilities and get those fixed? I mean, we talked about a number of other issues as well, but basically, it would be awesome if some money popped out of that. I'm not sure, but if nothing else, if we can get more people to participate, the OpenSSF has a huge number of folks now involved, and that's great. There's still some folks that we think should be involved that aren't yet, but we'd like them to be. So while we can't force anybody to be involved, we are trying to encourage them to be involved. And I think there is interest in either folks outside getting involved or folks who are involved being more so. And that's a very, very good thing. One last quick note that didn't come out in their summary is we did talk about the need for this to be international. It's not really a U.S. only problem. And we actually got some pointers from the U.S. government because they have contacts with other governments and maybe trying to get more collaboration and such with many different governments, which would be, I think, a good thing because it's not unique to these are not issues unique to any one country.
And I guess the only thing I'm fairly optimistic that this will be funded for real in the short to medium term. I think now is the right time. The realization's there. I think organizations are being pressured, particularly with the executive order, actually, to be able to assert that all of this open source that they depend on is meets the bar, and an understanding that the bar is not free of known CVEs. So I'm optimistic.
Right. All great news. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, two more mundane things, I guess. The metrics.openssf.org, we got that migrated over to the OpenSSF subscription, so that is now fully detached from my work account. That's good. It was rebuilt. Everything's been updated. We got the DNS moved over. It now Scorecard v4 was released this morning. We ingested the data last week, so it now has 1 million projects with Scorecard data, which is really cool. Perf seems to be fine on individual projects. The homepage loads slowly because I'm missing an index, and I just need to do that over the weekend and fix all that. But long term, though, I had a conversation with Jim Zemlin and Brian yesterday. I think that the right place for metrics.openssf.org to be is LFX security as a platform, and for that platform to be expanded out to cover all of the projects. So directionally, I don't think we want to run our own infrastructure, especially for something like this, where we're just aggregating existing data sources. I know there's active discussions going on LFX security, on how to scale and financing and stuff like that. We'll cross that bridge, when we get there. But I think directionally, that's the right way to go for that. So the site will probably live on for at least 6 months, maybe longer, depending on when that actually is good. That's all I have.
Yep. Yeah, I think the big challenge, and I presume you talked about this, is the whole, originally LFX was more for LF projects.
Yeah.
So how do we expand out so much more broadly? So glad to see the conversation happening.
Yep. Yeah, and there's definitely a clear desire from Brian and Jim that LFX security not cover just Linux Foundation projects, which kind of makes the LF in LFX a little awkward, but naming, I don't think any of us are brave enough to like solve naming problems. Cool. Security, is Luigi? Not yet. How about security reviews? Amir, how are you?
Good, thank you. Had a good session with Dylan before our meeting. Big thanks to Dylan for helping fix some of the validator issues that we were having and just cleaning up the repo. A cool thing that Dylan did too, which we just tested that seems to be working, is he split up the actions into kind of separate compartments. One of them being to automatically update that overview table as soon as a security review, a new one is uploaded into the repo. So we tested that and that's working, and really just working to make the process easy, consistent, to drive more engagement and to make it easier for folks to share the work that they are doing. Dylan, I know you typically have to leave a little early, but did I miss anything that you wanted to update?
Yeah, well, no, that was great. I guess just for some updates. Oh yeah, to what Amir just said, it's kind of confusing, the reason why I did this. But I had to separate the workflow, the GitHub workflow. You know how you have that validator script running, Mike. So previously, I just kind of tacked on a step to that to like generate an overview and stuff like that. But that only works on pushes, where the validator works on should be run on pushes and pull requests. After a while, I kind of figured out that was the issue because it does its own add commit push from the generate overview to like automatically recycle it. So I can't do that on a pull request because you can't like push to someone else's repo from your, if that makes sense. It's a very logistical thing, but I did that, and then I made some fixes to the some of the reviews that were breaking the validator. One of them I only realized until after I fixed them that you had already done, Mike. So apologies, so you scrapped your PR there. But anyway, yeah, just logistical stuff. So that the build succeeds now, and just to make sure it stays consistent like that. We're walking through, I was like discussing with Amir how to like, so to help us ensure that we are like trying to prevent that from staying tainted in the future by like submitting everything through PRs, even if it's himself, right? And all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So is the automated update of the table already working now, or you've got the code working, but it's not put into the system yet?
No, it works. It's done. It's already, you can already look at the most recent commit. It says update overview.md. That was not written by anyone. That was posted by the script upon a push by Amir. And it went through and it found anything that needed to be changed with the overview, and it changed it. So
woohoo! That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. You guys are awesome.
We do have a good working draft. Yeah.
I'm not sure. The only thing I'm not sure about, because we haven't tested it yet, is because that only works on pushes. If that only works when Amir pushes, because he's the admin and he just made this push, or if like maybe someone help me out here, guys. When you like, so if I were to fork this repo, do I get all the actions like with it into my own like little fork, and will that run in my own fork? I'm not sure. If that's the case, then this just fully works. If not, it works when Amir posts something.
I'm not sure that it does. Yeah, I'm not sure it does, but when you merge it back, I would imagine the merge could trigger this. That sounds like something we ought to test.
Right, but I disabled it on pull requests, only on push. Yeah, so it's a weird thing, but regardless, it'll at least update as frequently as Amir makes a change, which is a lot more than not updating it. But yeah, ideally, yeah. So we're gonna keep our eyes on that. I think it'll work still if someone else makes a change and pushes and then submits a PR. But yeah, I don't want to suck up too much time. That's all I got.
But yeah,
Awesome.
things are moving along nicely, and thanks to Dylan for helping with the backend stuff.
Very cool.
Thanks for those reviews too. I think Amir, I think maybe it's just after our last, after our last meeting, but constantly churning in reviews there. So it's awesome stuff. It's definitely growing each meeting we got. So
awesome.
Good work to you too, Amir.
Thank you.
Now wait a minute. Where the table is not as visible as it should be on our README. That's crazy. Where is that generated table under
All right.
docs?
Oh, it's overview.md. It's on the just right in the like.
Oh, okay. Yeah, all right. I see it. Oh, we need to emphasize this thing. I mean,
We
Oh,
have
you
like a
think
giant
that-
button in the README.
yeah, giant button. You know, right now it's not. There's not even a link other than the endless list of files. There's not even a link to it from the README. We, you know, this thing is awesome. We need to make it really obvious.
Okay.
You don't think
I would put it even before the submit a review, because most people who are going to go here are not going to submit a review. They want to get the goodies. And then once
Okay.
they've seen one, they'll go, ooh, I could submit one too. But
All right.
yeah, great
Cool.
stuff. Thank you.
You want me to add it just in the okay? I'll add it before.
I would
how do
put just
submit a
before the how do I submit a review? Here's where you can see all the reviews.
Here's a list of all the yeah. All right,
Yep.
sounds good. I'll
But
do
but
that.
why do we have overview of all reviews? Oh, those are two different.
Oh, we can probably scratch that. So that
Yeah.
was the old one that we just
That was
left
the old
there.
one, yeah.
Well, yeah, I still haven't gone through this old one and seen if there was anything. Yeah, we kind of just left it up here to see if there was anything that, because this is actually, this is a little prettier because it was manually done. So maybe if there's to get any inspiration from this, haven't revisited that yet. I don't know if you guys have any
Gotcha.
ideas.
Yeah, I would first start, but let's get a link to our new Wonder generated thing, and then yeah, if we can improve the generator, that's awesome too. But let's point people quickly to that good stuff you got.
No problem. I'll get on that right away. And does it sound like you got permission to? Should we just delete this previous one, the overview of all reviews, and
Or at least rename it to old or something.
I just deleted it. It's Git. It's in history. If we ever make a
There you
mistake, we can go back.
That's what I was thinking.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
There we go.
Yep.
All right,
What is
done.
this new school
I'll
concept?
make those
Awesome.
changes.
I'm still afraid of hitting delete.
You and
just-
me
I
both.
know.
Just
terrifying.
copy it to desktop. Cool, awesome. So no Luigi yet, so I'll wait on that for a little bit. Let's see. Alpha Omega. We are. I'm waiting to get job recs finalized and sent out. I was hoping to have that done already. It'll be really soon. So we're gonna be. I think the initial hire set is 6. Though it might be 5, but it'll wind up being a combination of we need at least one security analyst, at least one top tier engineer who's gonna be like writing rules and doing things like that, a project manager, and at least one product manager. Product manager would be overseeing the entire program, and the question is, do we need one for can one split between Alpha and Omega, or do we need one for Alpha and one for Omega? So if you know any people, now is a great time to shoot me a note, and we'll start chatting. Obviously, once job descriptions are out, it'll be a little bit easier, but we're also looking for the right person to run this and kind of own this, kind of take ownership and be like the, it's a startup, so it's like one of the first key hires in the startup. NPM colors, I thought this was an interesting one just to touch on, because it was kind of an interesting attack. For those of you who have not, or that aren't aware of it, this was a little bit controversial, so I'll do my best to just like state the facts. This was a little over a week ago, maybe almost 2 weeks ago. The author, the maintainer of the NPM colors package, which I think gets 20 million download, or it's 20 million or 4 million. It's a super popular NPM package. Sabotaged their own package. Basically turned it into it had to be an infinite loop and pushed a couple new versions. And this is reportedly due to them being upset at not being compensated by commercial organizations that were using his package. They also deleted or published an empty version of Faker and cleared out their GitHub repository for Faker. So this is interesting because in most threat models, we don't really, it's kind of akin to insider threat for within the open source community. We usually like expect compromised accounts or fake stuff. David?
Yeah, let me interrupt you right now. There are a large number of people where this is part of their threat model.
Fair
and
enough.
And it has been, I mean, this has been cited for decades as,
Yep.
well, wait a minute, a developer can subvert their own software. That's true.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I guess it hasn't happened in recently that I could think of off the top of my head. Maybe
it has happened before. Well,
yeah.
This is not a first.
Okay. So yeah. So I mean, some of the cleanup was a little bit awkward, and some stuff in the news on whether the right actions were taken. Within NPM and GitHub and things like that. I think what's done is done. I think it's stable at this point. And the bad versions were the bad version of colors was removed from NPM. I believe Faker being empty is still there, but it was not malicious or destructive. I think they just left it there. So just wanted to see if there were any comments or thoughts or questions or anything on that. But I did want to just bring that up.
Yeah, my main comment was, which I mentioned earlier, that many folks, a malicious developer is not a new construct. So I mean, it is much less common, obviously, than the unintentional vulnerabilities by far.
Yeah.
But it's certainly not new.
Yeah.
I just put down at least two key things, because in my mind, and I tried to emphasize this also during that White House meeting, no, we should not beat on people for making mistakes in particular, but whenever there's a vulnerability of any kind of security incident, we should be learning from it. And there's two things in particular. One is apps can counter this by pinning dependencies. Now, one problem is that in general, libraries shouldn't pin, particularly if you can only load one version. But even if you can't, that's a problem. But at least apps, if they do that, then this can counter that, because you don't just automatically load what happened is a lot of NPM apps automatically load the latest version they've never tested, and all of a sudden, shocker of shockers, the latest version screws things up, and that can happen just unintentionally. Another thing that is test before shipping. What an amazing construct. I think it's a good idea. Some people apparently don't think it's a good idea, but they still should do it anyway.
Right. Cool.
And I mean users, because obviously the attacker, I mean, he could have had tests and just subverted them. But if you bring in a library, run tests, then ship, any test at all would have realized, oh, wait, my system hung. That probably is not a working version.
But I think the problem there is that, like, and in some ways, like you could argue it was an attack, but it wasn't like, if the maintainer was really trying to make he would have like waited a bit or exfiltrated variables or like dumped memory, or like there's a ton of other things that could have been done that would have been malicious and would not have shown up through tests. So I've made this thing into an infinite loop, or I've zeroed out all the code, or it obviously doesn't work at all. Yeah, that would have been caught by tests. But the idea of, and this is why I do think this is an interesting, of the trusted developer that turns malicious without like just kind of wakes up one day and becomes malicious, is really hard to defend against. And I agree that like pinning dependencies will keep you safe, but then like, well, when do you ever update? Like without any validation, like you just defer updates until maybe someone else figures it out. You know, I don't know. It's this one kind of the copycats to this attack frighten me more than most of the other ones out there. But,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, I'm not revealing any state secrets, but at least for some folks, for some organizations, particularly governments, I mean, they're actually worried about malicious and nation states.
Yeah.
Not just, I mean, not just
Mhm.
an individual. So the whole, hey,
Mhm.
I'm worried about a malicious developer, again, much rarer, but not a first.
Yeah.
You're right about the exfiltration not being discovered by testing, but I still think it's a good idea because
Oh,
even if that the testing only works against availability attacks as opposed to exfiltration attacks, they obviously can happen. And it does seem like I think it's always a good idea to test before you ship. I mean, I guess I'm kind of radical that way.
But don't talk against functionality, but what about acquiring information? I mean, if you are not doing anything malicious, but just acquiring something that you are not supposed to, or a performance impact. I mean, answering in time depends on the time frame of you want to answer. So yes, and regarding of the, I mean, as a developer, as an open source developer, you usually do it on your spare time. If you are happy, well, if you're lucky, you'll get paid or any other source of income. But if you're talking about enterprises or states, they have more resources in terms of persons and time and money. So it, and open source is based a lot on trust. So yes, I'm with you, Michael.
Yep.
Yeah. Now I actually want to push back a little bit on this on that narrative because we did a survey of open source developers, and a little over half of the developers were specifically being paid to develop and maintain the open source software. Now that does mean that a little under half aren't being, and therefore are volunteers as you described. But I don't want to leave this conversation thinking that everyone's a volunteer because that's not true anymore. It hasn't. The Apache software, the Apache web server, they stopped being volunteers in the, I think, late 90s. It's just
I can
not
only
true for a lot of projects.
tell you an example from my domain. I'm a Java developer, and Maven being one of the main build packages, like it's still a labor of love from 5 guys that actually don't even have their own company for that. So,
I don't doubt it happens.
So,
yeah, it's absolutely true. But I just want to say that not everybody's there, and so I think we have to be careful about the generalities.
Yeah, David, I am curious. The 50% stat that you have, what was the pool of like? How did you assemble the pool? And I don't need like the full story, but like, was that like of most critical or high profile components, or was that like a random cross section?
The problem with surveys, as anybody who's done a survey knows, is the survey is of those who respond to the stinking survey, which is a perennial problem. So this was actually a survey done by Harvard. What they did is they first went out with a list of critical projects they had done earlier and contacted them specifically. They had a mailing list of those developers and contacted them first. However, because that's obviously a relatively narrow microcosm, there was then a number of broad pushes to try to get. I went on podcasts and basically trying to reach out through various blog posts and so on to reach out to anyone who develops open source software. So it was really open to anyone who develops open source software, but there was a special push to emphasize the ones who were developing the software that really everybody depends on.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. I think we're probably good on that topic. Luigi, hello. Oh, you're on mute.
Hello. Sorry
Hello.
for the
That's
30
okay.
minutes late.
Let's see if you wanted to give an update on security insights. So your Slack post.
Yes, I've written a YAML configuration with some regex. I need to add the description, for example, because now there is the schema, and but there is no description for every voice or every input. I prefer to add a short description for everything, so people know why we have had a particular label, for example, and how to use it in the right way. I have had some regex, just why not? It is a first version. It is just where I mean, it is the logic is that the user add the input, and this input is used by the scorecard to add the missing information to solve false positive, for example. And of course, we can improve the current scheme. Especially, I would like to add something related to dependencies /bomb or SBM home. I am not sure how to proceed now, because I mean, there is that this should be a sort of a human readable file, but if we add the long list of dependencies, probably it's not so readable. So maybe we can find a good solution from user experience, because I am concerned about this point, honestly. Maybe the standard is good, but if people don't start to use it, it is totally useless. And I am involved with the security.txt creator at Overflow. Why not? Because, well, our approach, our methodology is similar to the security.txt, of course, with more information. And I have seen that when people start to comment on Slack, so probably this means that the project is becoming mature or more mature. We have a first draft. I have created on my GitHub a repo, but we can move under OpenSSF, so people can open issue. And especially, I have written first version, but it is not still the first version. It is just a draft, but in this way, people can open issue, and we can track the improvement that we can do before launching it. But we have a schema, and
I really appreciate the work that you've done, but the problem I have is, who is this for? If the primary users are scorecard and the best practices badge, it's not set up for either user. So we're gonna have to figure out what to do here.
Well, initially our question was creating a file where some information like the vulnerability disclosure policy can be added in the repo and similar. But yes, I need to. I mean, this file can be scanned by the scorecard. It's not an issue, and especially we can improve the fields related to the CI and CD, because at the moment it is not mandatory. Probably cannot be mandatory if someone has no CI, especially for small open source project. But I would like to have more information about CI. So if the scorecard doesn't find the CI directly, because the CI is a very custom implementation usually, it can read the CI configuration, and it can check if it is true, because the user need to add a URL. And in this way, we can create a YAML that can be used by the scorecard. Because for the scorecard, I mean, for the first implementation, I suppose that the most important feature are reduce the false positive related to CI, and reduce the false positive related to security MD or something similar like PDP. Reduce the missing contact, because in this file you can add the contact, the owner of the project, and it can help also with the type squatting, because if the user add where a particular package is uploaded or shared, the user and the scorecard or similar tool can say, okay, in this channel we have an official version. So this is at the three main area. I need to understand how to proceed with the CI. So I would like to have a URL for the CI or something.
Okay, well, you keep saying the CI. Which the CI? You mean the continuous integration pipeline? I'm sorry?
SAST and DAST and FATSR and similar.
Okay, you're talking about the CI pipeline for a specific project, right?
Yes, probably CI is not the correct. I mean, it is a
like the auto run tools.
Yes,
tools are run on whatever.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. I would call that the CI pipeline.
Okay, perfect. Yes.
Yeah, but you know, I think the notion here was for us not to try to derive this, but the problem was that CI pipelines are hard to analyze, and so this would help us capture that kind of information. Right.
I mean, yes, exactly. Sometimes you have a public CI. For example, if you are using a GitHub action, you can say we are using the GitHub action. Also, if the final user cannot see the result or the output of this CI, it's not a problem, it's normal. Then there are other CI that cannot be easily proved by the user. And this is the point for me, that it's not easy to solve. I mean, maybe a tool have an internal CI, but you cannot easily prove this. If you have file on your repo, you can. If you haven't, for any infrastructure configuration or particular environment setting, you cannot easily prove that you have a CI. At the same time, the scorecard, the OpenSSF metric dashboard use 3 colors: green, red, and yellow. Maybe we can, when a project say that there is a CI, but it cannot prove this, we can use the yellow color or add the flag by say, the user say this, but we have no proof. So in the the final counter, we cannot, of course, increase the score for this information, but at the same time, we can share with the final user this information.
Well, so actually the nice thing is, so scorecards v4 switched from a pass-fail to a 0 to 10 scale. And as far as I can see, there's no like built-in what makes a pass, what makes a fail. You decide yourself, like, do you want 9 or better to be pass or 5? So the idea of having, and I posted this into the into the meeting notes as an example from, I think this is LeftPad. LeftPad doesn't have a security policy, but if LeftPad had a security insights file that said that my security policy is, I call it, security-foo.md, then I think it would be reasonable for scorecard to give some credit to that assertion.
Yes, definitely.
Maybe not the same level as the automated one, but something, and therefore you'd be probably getting more accurate data out of scorecard.
Yes, this is because at the moment you can add just a security.md empty, and the security scorecard say that you have. So the point is that sometimes it is helpful to have a link so the user can read it, the researcher, for example, and the YAML file can add the scorecard in this way. The point for me is now that probably after that we agree on the first version of the schema. Please, David, you can open all the issue that you want so I can improve it. Don't worry. I know this, but we need to agree on the first version. At the moment, I would like to keep the thing easy because I'm really concerned that people can just not start to use it because it is too difficult. At the same time, then we need to talk with the scorecard team to say, we would like to create this new standard with this information, like a sort of security.txt for repo. And if you start to scan it, we can maybe spread better. Also for the Alpha Omega, we could ask to the maintainer to write this file. It can help them, it can help us. And if we start to spread this standard in the popular project, especially in the big corporate or popular open source project or an entity, I suppose that people then follow because if there is a standard, usually people like to use.
I have a feeling that some projects, like some organizations, like Apache, might be very interested in using this because they do things slightly different than a lot of other projects, and therefore I know that they were not showing up as accurately as they should.
I remember that tweet.
Yeah.
Yes, and
All right.
I would like to fix this with the first implementation. So having the right path, having the right URL that maybe the scorecard cannot find, having the contact for the human, having some information on the CI with the URL, if you can prove it better, because so the scorecard can improve it, and the scorecard needs just to implement this check. And again, David, sometimes maybe I don't remember everything that. Yes, another point. Yes, please, David. Open issue in the repo for now, so I can update in a synchronous way. I really need this, or just write on Slack so discussion can receive other comments and we can find the best solution. Probably you are right. Our first draft, document draft for this project is now not so aligned. I mean, it's aligned but not well ordered. And probably I would like to rewrite it in Markdown because so people we can easily update it on GitHub. I have just do a very quick copy paste of some main paragraph, but probably I need to rewrite it in Markdown on the repo. And I will add you as a reviewer using GitHub, so we can have also the review process and we can proceed in this way. So next steps probably are formalize the CI check or where people can put the URL for CI or something similar, and reorder the README file. And then maybe talk with the scorecard team because they.
Yeah, I've already talked with them briefly. They're very hesitant because
I know
they are really trying to only say what are the facts we are certain of, and they're very afraid that somebody just having a file that makes random claims, the claims may be false.
But I totally agree. But at the end, again, the security.md is just a URL that they can check. So for the scorecard, adding a check for a custom URL is not an issue.
Right. I'm trying to express their viewpoint. What I pitched back to them was that, okay, maybe you don't have as much confidence, but you've already got a 0 through 10 score. So maybe you give it a lower score if you can't find the tool, but there's a security insights that says that it is. The one thing I'm concerned, I raised this earlier, and I'm not sure how to deal with it, is, I'm open to using this within the best practices badge, in concept, but we're going to have to find a way to get the information that the badge needs. So, for example, in many cases, it needs not just a where it is, but why does this meet the criteria, a justification, which is at least a URL and in many cases text. Because it's markdown text with URLs allowed. And so that's going to be, we haven't really, I've raised that before, but we haven't really figured out how to deal with no, don't just tell me, but give me a justification.
Yes, I mean, just about the badge, just to be sure if I have rightly understood the flow. At the moment, you have an open source project and you want to obtain the badge. To obtain the badge, you need to meet some requirement, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
This requirement can be checked by an automated tool like the scorecard.
A small minority can. Most cannot. The badge, early on, we tried to identify what was important, and we found the vast majority were really not automatable. Therefore, we emphasized what a human could respond to, whether or not it could be automated. If it can be automated, we try to automate it.
Okay.
But it's not a requirement that it be automatable.
Okay, so the point is, I have my open source project. I want to, I meet the requirement for the badge, but I need to prove this because there are no automated scanner that can prove this for me. So I can add this information with URL, with text, we can define it to the YAML, and then the scanner can the point is that the scorecard cannot ask to this data. The human can check manually, maybe, but I am not sure that the scorecard can trust to the badge.
Scorecard badge, 2 different projects. Which one are you talking about?
Okay, so the scorecard don't need to use this information, just for human.
Why are you saying scorecard? I was talking about badge. Are we still on badge, or did we switch to scorecard?
The point is that all the information that we had in the YAML can be used potentially by automated tool, like scorecard.
That's right. That's right. But it also could be used by the badging process.
Exactly.
And it's automated system too.
Okay.
The problem is, if you want to plug into the automated system of the badging system, you've got to provide the data that it needs, which is in many cases not just whether or not something is true or false. It needs to know whether or not something is true or false and the justification for it.
Okay. Second question. The justification can be long, I suppose, sometimes.
Sure.
Okay. And this is the point, the same challenge that I have, for example, for the third-party packages. We want to add the text directly in the YAML, and it can be not so human-friendly then, or we want to ask to the developer to write a text file, put where they want to add the link to the YAML file.
I'm not sure I understand what you say, but I mean, it's not hard to edit a YAML file, and although the text can be long for the justification, what we typically tell people is write a short justification with a URL that points off to the more details.
URL.
So while it can be long, it's markdown, so it can be long, but it typically isn't. It's typically a sentence or maybe 5 or 6 sentences and pointing off to more details.
I can add a limit on the length on the lang inputs.
You could. There is actually a limit on it. I think it's like 64K, so it's not much of a limit. But it has to be UTF-8. There we go. There are limits. But let's see here. Are there other things, or is this the last topic, Mike?
I think that was the last topic. Wait, did I have something else? I just wanted to see if anybody thought that we should iterate again on the threats paper and actually put some time and cycles into a VNet. That the paper's coming up on 2 years old now, so I don't know how much of the ecosystem has changed, but this is a couple dozen hours worth of work if we want to do it.
Yeah, I suspect we've got other fish that are higher priority. So, let's see. You know what? I probably can I share my screen?
You can try.
I can try. All righty. Did it work? Are you seeing a screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, goody. Okay. So this is the best practices badge. All right, so let's see here. I'm just going to go to, we can look at the Linux kernel. We can look at, I usually use the badge itself because the badge itself also earns its own badge because we're trying not to be hypocrites. And what you find is that there's a whole bunch of criteria that have to be met. In some cases, they can be, not applicable. And there's text on each of these, and each of these criteria has an identifier like description _ good. And if you went, I actually can show it.
Okay, I can recreate the entire infrastructure of this badge, probably. Yes.
Yeah. If let's see here. Well, I think I have to log in. Okay, so let me.
Okay.
Yeah, hold up. Let me. Where is the let's see, where is the stop sharing? A little X in the bottom?
I thought it was on the top.
All right.
Well, you did it.
I did it. Okay. All right. Let me quickly log in because I'm trying to not. All right. Let's see here. All right. I mean, I don't use a password, but still. Yeah, actually, I'm not using a password, so I guess it doesn't matter. All right, well, I did that anyway. So let me go back to the Microsoft Teams and click on share screen. Okay, so if I look at its JSON format. Okay.
There are a lot of questions for the page.
Yeah, although to be fair, I mean, there are 3 tiers, and so you don't actually need to answer all questions, and the automation does help. All right, but here is, if you look at the JSON format, and then I'm using Firefox because it does a nice job of prettily showing JSON. For each of these, there's a status, basically met or unmet, and a justification.
Okay, can you send me the link to this JSON so I can use it as sort of example? And
sure.
And I need to add every voice or just some voice from this JSON?
Well, you don't have to add them all, but obviously the ones that are done means that we can try to kill this. The ones that are done are ones that we can then automatically extract from also. And the reason to automatically extract is, it's really not hard for a human to enter into a form for a single project. The real challenge has been, for example, the NPM packages, where people like to package up is odd and is even, and answering a lot of questions for something that's 1 line long is a little more dubious.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so let's see here. So I will add a link as the sample, and I would be happy to talk about that as a potential user, but we'll need to figure out how to make it provide data that we can actually directly use. If that makes any sense.
Okay. Because, for example, there are some inputs or data that we already have in the first in the current schema, and I don't know if we want to create a sort of duplicate. If we can create this kind of.
We don't have to, but then we've got to figure out what the mapping is, and obviously that adds additional complexity.
Yes.
To the processing, because now it means you got to look at multiple places, and for all of them, even if they're somewhere else, it's not a big deal. But it's not just, hey, is something present? For some of these, it's a present and does it meet certain criteria.
Okay.
So just for example, having a README isn't enough. It's a README with certain information.
Mm-hmm.
If I could make a recommendation, and I don't feel strongly either way, but I think we should be intentional about whether or not security insights kind of subsumes in some way the criteria from badge, or because you probably make similar arguments that the security policy should actually be defined within security insights and not within security MD. And I think that would be the wrong thing to go. That it would be wrong to do that for security MD, and I'm not sure if it's the right thing to do it for badge. Should security insights simply be the I don't know, the spackle or the fill in the gaps of what doesn't already exist somewhere else?
I think that's perfectly
you know what I mean?
reasonable to the connector, as you will.
Yeah, like I'm just afraid of security insights becoming this enormous, complicated, never finished, and never used tidbit of history. I'd much rather have something simple that is used in the next month that we all try out, and then we iterate on it for 1.1 with the complaints of people that say, you know what? Yes, we include the link security to MD, but like 40% of them are blank files. So
right. You know what? And it's perfectly reasonable, for example, for the security insights to only have a couple fields relevant to the badge, and then it looks at it loads in security insights, looks at if it exists, and loads in just those fields if they are present, and then uses only them. And that would be a perfectly fine way to use it.
Linking out to the badge URI, I think is totally fine, because that might be a non-obvious like link that you wouldn't be able to go that way and find it without fuzzy searches. So the same way that you would link
I don't
to an
understand
NPM.
that phrase.
Sorry, the security insights might have that core infrastructure .1.json URI or an ID number or something that would something that would mean, here's how to
you're
find
thinking
me.
the other direction.
Yes.
Yeah, I was actually thinking the other direction. When you start a badge, let's say you're managing 100 npm packages, and you want a badge for each of them. Being able to create a little security insights file that pre-fills in some information, and then you make a copy and say, hey, yeah, I do this because I do it the same way for all my projects. That would help folks pursuing a badge.
Starter helper things are awesome. We should do them everywhere. Yeah.
So that's at least my mental mind that I had.
Perfect. I have to run to another meeting. Thank you all very much. I really appreciate everybody's time. Great conversation today. Enjoy the rest of your week, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Luigi.
Bye.
Thanks, Luigi.
Bye all.